Hey sinners, you're listening to Sinful Cuts, the podcast that takes a look at the wild, weird, and wonderful world of horror. We take a deep dive into some of your favorite movies, possibly uncover some hidden gems. Sometimes we even get some stinkers. Thank you so much for joining us. We truly love having you here. Please sit back, take a listen, and let's get our scare on. Sinful Cuts audience, sinners, we got none other than the amazing Erik Hanson from the Cradle to the Grave podcast here with us. I was going to say something silly like, if you don't know Cradle to the Grave, but of course you all do, it's one of, if not the best horror movie podcast out there.
Dude, well, I appreciate that, Sean. Your podcast is also one of the best. I really enjoy it. I reached out to you earlier, and you're going to be coming on to my podcast, Cradle to the Grave, pretty soon. But thank you so much for inviting me to come on and chat with you and Shannon whenever Shannon does show up. I know she's having some technical difficulties.
She's having a little technical difficulties, and of course, I just made fun of her and teased her, and now I have the benefit of being remote today, but the next time that we're together, she's absolutely going to kick my ass. So I got that to look forward to. But I reached out to Erik because first I just wanted to have you on the podcast because I greatly respect that the work that you do.
Thank you.
Especially,
I appreciate it. I appreciate the kind words. Thank you so much.
Well, it's like there are a lot of podcasts out there, and there are a lot of good podcasts out there. But what I love that you do, it's not just the guests that you have. You have such varied guests, which makes it incredibly exciting. But it's the fact that it really is you. You're the it's true.
It's true.
Look,
I don't.
It's the captain.
Yeah, it's true. Like that's one thing I was talking earlier to you before we hit that record button about how I love chatting about horror movies with cool people. That's all Cradle to the Grave is, man. It's not. Yeah. It's an interview show, but it's also chatting with friends show. Like I want Cradle to the Grave to be the coolest party that everybody's invited to, right?
And that's exactly what it feels like.
and it's there are some guests that come on that some celebrity guests that come on or actors from movies that maybe there's little nerves. I get a little nervous, like, oh my god, I'm really chatting with Duncan Rieger, who played Dracula in Monster Squad. I'm a little nervous about that. And then I'll have the drummer from my old band, Chip, come on, and it's me and him riffing back and forth. It's a lot of fun, and some of the chats get wacky, man. Most of the chats with me and Chip are wacky and they're goofy, and we barely talk about the movie at all.
Those are some of my favorite ones, though.
Me too. Yes.
All right, wait, hold on. We actually have to give away the recipe. So, okay. So, sinners, what Erik does is he was born in 1971, and what he's doing is he's doing the top 10. Now, his choice of the top 10 picks for the horror movies of that year. So, starting from 1971, and Erik, if I'm not mistaken, we're up to 86, right?
Yes. Well, actually 87. So Predator
87.
Just dropped today.
R.I.P. Carl Weathers. Yeah.
Yes. Rip Carl Weathers. But yeah, so it is each year of my life. I go through each year of my life, and I pretty much what I do is I compile a list of horror movies that came out any given year. Now, when I say the top 10 horror movies, that is a misnomer, because sometimes I get a guest that'll pick a really horrible horror movie, like Giant Spider Invasion, which is one of the shittiest films ever, but it made the top 10 list because one of my guests picked it. So what I do is I'll take all the movies that my guest picked and I'll arrange them in best to the worst. And of course, Giant Spider Invasion made number 10. But yeah, for the most part, it's the big hitters from each year, The Exorcist, Jaws, Salem's Lot. But a lot of times, like in 1972, for my number one horror film from 1972, was a made-for-TV movie called The Night Stalker, right? And I love that film. And, it topped Deliverance as my favorite. So there's that aspect, it's like, this is what I think are the top movies. Even like 1976, Assault on Precinct 13 made my number one horror film from that year. Is that a horror film? Maybe.
It's horrifying. I mean, and I do love a siege movie. So, hey, you know what, though? We created the podcast. We can do whatever the heck we want, right?
That's right. There's no rules in Cradle to the Grave, which is what I love to say.
No crying in horror.
That's right, man. And I always tell my guests, just come on and talk about it. I don't care what you talk about. I just edited an episode today before I came on to talk with you, Sean, about Jaws 4, right? That's coming out next week. And I chatted with Josh Flanagan from iFanboy. And it is the funniest, goofiest. We barely talk about Jaws 4, right? We're talking about G.I. Joe.
Those are my favorite episodes. Those are my favorite episodes that you do. Because the two of you, or sometimes there's even multiple people, and you're like, are we ever going to talk about this? And you're like, I don't know. Do we have to? Man.
I'm just stoked to be chatting with Josh from iFanboy. It's a lot of fun. There you go. It's a lot of fun.
Well, you do a fantastic job, and your guests are incredible. So what we're doing today, the concept for today is instead of doing a movie, we're actually going to do multiple movies, and the linchpin to all of them are going to be Dracula. It's going to be the movies through the ages that feature Dracula. I think, if I'm not mistaken, you're actually going to start with the original Universal Bela Lugosi.
No.
Good. All right. Good. I like.
we're already going off the rails, man. It's already off the rails. No,
that's what I love.
I am going with Nosferatu, Symphony of Terror from 1922, which is a Dracula movie. Even though he's not called Dracula in the film, he's called Count Orlok.
No, you're right.
But you know the history of Nosferatu, right, Sean? You know the story behind that it was actually. An adaptation of Bram Stoker's novel. They didn't get the rights. So thankfully, all the film got burned, right? They destroyed all the copies of Nosferatu, except for one dude hid a copy away or something. And they found it years later. Like, holy shit, it's Nosferatu from 1922. And thank God that somebody had the presence of mind to save that, because what a film. I don't know if you watched Nosferatu recently, but
I haven't seen it in ages, but it leaves an impression. That's for damn sure.
Here's the way I recommend watching Nosferatu. You watch it at night. You turn off all the lights, and hopefully it's a stormy night, right? And it's windy outside. And you put your cell phone away. You actually bury your cell phone in the ground, so no, you're not. Don't be distracted, okay?
Circle it with garlic. Yeah.
You turn off all the lights. And you have a copy of Nosferatu without any music score, right? Don't watch with the music score. And don't watch a colorized version of it. Just watch the original. And it will scare you. I guarantee you. There are moments in Nosferatu that is generally creepy. Some of the creepiest things ever captured on celluloid. The scene where Harker is in Dracula's castle and Nosferatu is at the end of the hall, and the camera kind of zooms in on him, and you got little Nosferatu standing there, all creepy looking. Dude, you're gonna get chills. You're gonna get creeped out. So that's the way to watch Nosferatu.
I love the suggestion. I think you're absolutely right, especially with a movie like a movie that old, but what they did with the visuals and how they found someone like Max Schreck, who possibly, I mean, I know Shadow of the Vampire basically accuses him of being a real live vampire, but he's damn close. Yeah.
I love that. I love that legend. That's who wouldn't want that type of legend for their movie? That this guy was actually a vampire. Well, I got to see that.
A lot of night shoots. Yeah. And now, of course, we got, who is it? Robert Eggers is redoing Nosferatu this year, which could be a banger,
Robert Eggers is the perfect dude to pull this off.
Yeah.
He's gonna pull it off. I got high hopes for it. So yeah, can't wait for that. Can't wait.
Perfect. So what we're going to do, we're going to start early. We're going to start with the early Draculas, and we'll take it through the decades, and then we'll take it all the way up to present day. So you started with Nosferatu. I'm gonna jump a little bit, just a little bit, because of course, we've got. I'm going to go to 1945's.
Oh, okay.
I told you I was going to do Billy the Kid versus Dracula, and I did watch it. But it's so god awful. I couldn't hang in there.
I was like, all right, dude, you do you.
I bit off a little more than I can chew on that one. It's a tough hang, Eric. It really is. And the copy, man. The copy that I had that I was able to find on streaming, it's like watching the movie through a dirty car window as you're in the middle of a car wash. It's so bad. But, you've got Carradine. I
love John Carradine, but he makes a really horrible Dracula.
He does. His Dracula is more like a kid's magician. He just gives off that appearance. I'm sure that somebody could have done something with him because he does have like a very gaunt skeletal appearance, but he plays no one ever made him up. You didn't get a Dick Smith or a Jack Pierce involved to try and, throw some latex on him or do something. So he really does come off like a kid's children's magician. But so the movie I picked was House of Dracula from 45. So It's a universal release, and they're trying to, capitalize on at this point during the mid 40s, they're doing like the monster mashups. I mean, this is basically like the Avengers of monsters for them back then.
Totally.
They've got, Frankenstein versus the Wolfman. Really, it makes a buck. Universal is like, all right, we're just going to ride this thing off into the sunset. So they do House Frankenstein, which features Karloff as like the mad scientist, and you've got Carradine as Dracula, and you've got Lon Chaney Jr. involved there as the Wolfman, and it's a perfectly fine film. They make all the pieces work, and Karloff actually gets to really chew a lot of scenery, and he's very, very good in the movie as the mad scientist. But at the end of it, you basically killed off all the monsters, and then Universal, they kind of look at each other, and they're like, we painted ourselves into a corner. What are we going to do? So someone raises their hand and said, let's make House of Dracula. Well, why are we going to bring all these monsters back? And they're like, who gives a shit? Lon Chaney literally just walks in the door. He gets shot. He gets shot in the last movie, and he just shows up in the next one, and they're like, you know what we'll do? We'll put a little Vincent Price mustache on him. No one's going to ask a question. And you know what? No one does. So you've got the reason I love House of Dracula is because you have you basically have like it's almost like a hospital for monsters. Frankenstein is frozen in the caves beneath the hospital. No one even knows he's there until half the movie's gone. Lon Chaney Jr. shows up to get a cure for his lycanthropy. Doesn't want to be a werewolf anymore. Right. I get that. Count Dracula shows up. You get Carradine shows up once again, vanquished in the previous film. What I love about these movies, they're like, just don't worry about it. No one's going to care, and no one did. And as a kid, when I saw these movies, I didn't care either.
Absolutely.
Bring back all the monsters. It doesn't have to make sense.
And you know what's cool? You saw these films in the 70s, right?
Yeah.
And this was made in 1945. All the decades later, they're still bringing in kids into the horror genre. It did me, watching these old Universal horror films as a kid on the Chiller Theater on Saturday mornings. That was the best, man. And these films hold up. They're still fun to watch. I agree, man. House of Dracula is awesome. I really love Frankenstein versus Wolfman.
Me too.
That's probably my favorite of all the Universal, besides the original Dracula and Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein. But then I'm going going Frankenstein and Wolfman. I don't mean to going off on the Frankenstein tangent real quick, but
No, please have at it.
I just think that is such an atmospheric gothic film. I love the beginning of the film with the in the graveyard with the grave robbers, and it is a direct sequel to the Wolfman because there's Larry Talbot in his tomb, and the grave robbers are coming in, and they try to steal that ring, right? And then Talbot wakes up. And they're like, it's cool. And then, then you get the awesome ending in the castle. And it's really, it says, Frankenstein versus Wolfman, but they don't meet until like the last minute of the film. They finally meet.
I was like, what's going on?
Yes. So, no, good pick, man. I'm glad you went with House of Dracula and not Billy the Kid, man. You redeemed yourself.
Billy the Kid. Oh, sinners, if you're out there and you really want to torture yourself, I mean, it's a stitch over about an hour and 10 minutes, hour and 20 minutes. Have at it. I mean, I guess it's clever because Billy, well, all right, spoilers for a movie that's, I don't know, 107 years old. But Billy the Kid makes little crosses in his bullets, and that's how he gets Dracula. So that was clever. But man, the hang until you get to that part, whoo,
it's rough.
That was a tough one. You won't even know this is happening because I'm going to edit everything out. But we're back now, and we have Shannon.
I'm going to tell him.
Come on, Eric.
Don't totally crash, man. The podcast sucks.
Yeah, podcast, you mother effers. You're taking my $15 every month and laughing at me. Yeah. All right. Well, the great thing is that we have Shannon. Shannon's here now.
Shannon,
so,
yay!
All right. Yeah. So where are we? Are we still in the 40s, 50s area?
A little jumping around a little bit.
Okay.
Started in 1922 with Nosferatu, and then Sean went to 1945.
You did House of Dracula.
What do you got,
so
Shannon?
I did 1948. Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein.
So yes.
I picked that one because when I was doing my research, I was actually very surprised to find out that Bela Lugosi only played Dracula twice. So the Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein was his second and final reprisal of the Dracula character. So even though it wasn't really centered around him, he was still a very big part of that film. And it was also important on the Abbott and Costello franchise because that, it's kind of like started to dwindle a little bit by this point. Personal issues going on or whatever. And then this revived the franchise of Abbott and Costello. And this was the first of the meat monsters regime, if you will. So, and 1940s, whatever comedy, it is still fucking funny to this day.
It's great.
I know I'm jumping to Abbott and Costello, but just to let you know, it's still fucking fun. I was laughing my ass off.
No, it's great. And that's an awesome pick. I have that as my 1940s pick. So you kind of stole my thunder, Shannon, but that's cool. I'll allow it.
I'm late.
No. I think Abbott and Costello, I was telling Sean before you hopped on, Shannon, that these old Universal movies from the 40s brought a lot of kids in that grew up in the 70s, like me and Sean. And I remember watching Abbott and Costello and loving it to death, like when I was a kid, because it had the comedy, but also it played the monsters straight. Like the monsters aren't there for laughs; they are there to kill Abbott and Costello, right? And it's scary. Like I remember being, Dracula was scary, So yeah, man. And I chatted on Cradle to the Grave, my own podcast, shameless plug. I was chatting with Duncan Rieger who played Dracula in Monster Squad. Nice. You ever see Monster Squad?
I fucking love Monster Squad.
Of course you saw Monster Squad.
Just to let you know, Eric, I'm a lot older than I look.
Go ahead.
Just to let you know, I'm a lot older than I look.
Okay. I wasn't going to say anything, but no. Yes, I chatted with Duncan and I made the comparison with Monster Squad from 87 to Abbott and Costello from 48, because again, Monster Squad is a comedy, but the monsters are played straight and it's scary.
Yes.
And, you know, the kids are in danger. And so perfect pick. Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein.
I feel like that movie in particular
Absolutely.
is responsible for getting so many kids into horror and really creating a generation of monster kids, especially during the 70s, because that movie was on constantly, you know? Now, wait, Eric, you're on the West Coast, right? You grew up in California and still live in California? And Shannon and I, of course, Sacramento, very nice. And we're on Long Island on the East Coast. What did you have? Because we had Chiller Theater and we had Creature Feature and Chiller Theater. Those were too.
Every state had their own Chiller Theater. They were usually called Chiller Theater or Creature Features. We had Creature Features out here on Channel 2, hosted by a guy named I want to say it's like Bob Smith, or man, I forget his name, but he had like the cigar and he had really Buddy Holly glasses, and he was super cool. And they had this scary intro. I remember as a kid, I would stay up late to watch it. And it had the scene from Dracula with the nurse or the taxi driver who got turned into a vampire running down the hallway in slow motion. Always freaked me out. So yeah. I loved watching Chiller Theater or Creature Features, man. Yeah, we all had them.
Yeah. Thank God we had that back in the day. I absolutely love it. All right, so we have one round of Dracula's done. Let's go into Eric's next pick. What have you got for us?
All right, so we would be remiss if we didn't backtrack a little bit and talk about Dracula from 1931, right? The Godfather. Right? Yeah, maybe Nosferatu is a Godfather, but it was really Dracula from 1931 that firmly cemented the Dracula that we know and love today, right? We trace it all back to Bela Lugosi. When you ask somebody to do a Dracula impersonation, guess what impersonation they're doing? They're doing Bela Lugosi, man. Right? They're not doing Gary Oldman. No. You know, they're not doing Frank Langella. They're doing Bela Lugosi, and that's for a reason, because he owned that role. He was born to play Dracula. He already had that accent. That was just the way he talked, right? And so he got cast. I think he did the play on Broadway first. Yeah. And then they did the film. And I love the 1931 film. Some people say it might be a little too stagey. It kind of looks like they just transported the Broadway play to, you know, the cinema, because there's not a lot of movement of the camera. That's
how it was though back then. Like they were still figuring out cinema, so it literally was a play
for sure
on the screen. Yeah. That's how it was.
But yeah, you cannot deny Lugosi's presence in that film. It's a phenomenal performance. And it has some really cool scenes, like when Harker gets to Dracula's castle in the beginning and meets Dracula. That set that they built,
it's gorgeous,
stunning. It's stunning.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
And so, I will say that Lugosi then goes on. I mean, he was like a heartthrob. You know, he scared a generation, and everyone loved Dracula, but women adored him. Like he was like a sex symbol there for a while, at least, and they couldn't get enough of they couldn't get enough of Dracula. That might have been a bit of a curse for him, maybe.
I was going to say there was he got pigeonholed, of course, as the horror guy, and he never was really able to break out of that. And then, of course, we know the history with Lugosi, his addiction issues, and it kind of was a sad ending. If you watch the film, Ed Wood kind of covers that later part of his life. Ed Wood's a really good film too, with Johnny Depp.
Yeah,
love it. Love it.
And I guess, was Bela Lugosi really buried in his Dracula cape? Was that just a legend?
He was.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm always going to go with the legend. I hope he was.
Got to.
I think it's like the only one that has like a brown lining, not a red lining, as opposed to popular belief
Oh.
because red wouldn't show up in black and white. It would
Mm.
look all black.
Okay.
There was
That
no
makes sense.
contrast to it, so it was
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
brown. That's what makes it the different cape. FYI.
You guys might know this story. You guys might know the story a little bit better than I do, but there is one cool story about just like the camaraderie between the horror icons. You had, gosh, I forget what movie it was, but you had Basil Rathbone and Boris Karloff and Lugosi, and they were all shooting a film. And Rathbone and Karloff were getting good pay, and they're basically paying Lugosi scale. And I mean, he just had, the poor guy just had financial troubles just forever. And Karloff and Basil Rathbone find out about it, and they're like, nah, man, you know what? We're going to walk off. If you don't pay him what you're paying us, forget it. We're out of here. So they coughed up the money, and they paid Lugosi what everybody else was making, which I thought was, sometimes you hear a lot of the stories about nobody got along and this one was jealous of this one. But I think that's, I think this is proof that they actually did really respect each other, and they had each other's back, which when you hear stories like that, it makes you feel good.
Yeah, yeah. Here's a question for you. Have you seen the Spanish version of Dracula? It's filmed at the same time.
I have not.
No? A lot of people
and on the same set, right?
Same set, same year. They just filmed at night. Different cast, of course, but yeah, like I said, a lot of people prefer the Spanish version because it does have a little flashier camera moves. But the guy who plays Dracula in the Spanish does not hold a candle to Bela Lugosi. I'm sorry, so you got to go with Lugosi.
I'm gonna have to check that out. Definitely have to check out the Spanish version. I have heard that too. Yeah,
it's good, but it's not as good as the original.
I think the original set,
in my opinion.
I think the original set was recycled for a lot of films around that time, the bleeding into the 40s as well, because of how magnificent it was.
Yeah, makes sense.
I'm going to fast forward a stitch here. I'm going to bring us to 1960 for our next one, and I'm actually going to do Brides of Dracula. I rewatched it this week. So This one doesn't have Christopher Lee, who, controversial opinion, might be my favorite Dracula. I really love Lee.
I agree. He's my favorite.
Yeah, he's just, I mean, he damn near, he almost has no lines in any Dracula movie.
I have a theory on why it's our favorite, but go ahead.
Okay, so but this one doesn't have Lee. It's actually it's got a little bit of a problematic Aryan vampire. This guy looks like one of the Von Trapp kids, but he does a good job. He does a good job, but the film itself. So you got you got Cushing in it as Van Helsing, which really grounds the movie. But this is directed by Terence Fisher. Now, Terence Fisher, he was just like a mainstay in the Hammer production, the machinery. He banged out Curse of Frankenstein, Horror Dracula, The Mummy, Curse of the Werewolf. Oh my God, can you imagine? He's got Oliver Reed boozing up all night long, and then he's got to put him in werewolf makeup. Oh my God, he should have gotten the Medal of Valor. They definitely didn't pay Terence Fisher enough for that movie. I'll go on record saying that right now. He did Phantom of the Opera with Herbert Lom, which happens to be one of my favorite Phantom of the Operas. The Gorgon, Dracula, Prince of Darkness, Frankenstein Created Woman, and Frankenstein and the Monster from Hell. So this guy was just like the go-to for Hammer. For sure. This movie is... it's one of my favorite vampire movies, one of my favorite Dracula movies, even though it doesn't really have a very dynamic Dracula, because it's just so gorgeous to look at. It's right in that prime wheelhouse, 1960, where Hammer was just, everything was saturated in that gorgeous color, and the cinematography is great. I mean, I wrote the guy down. Jack Asher was the cinematographer. What he does in this movie with just the camera movements and the shots that he constructs, it makes the film so watchable and so interesting. And then you just let Cushing loose, and he does his thing. And it was the first, when I was watching as a kid on either Chiller or Creature Feature, and Cushing gets bit, And I'm like, I didn't wait a minute, time out. he
Like,
he can't
what?
get bit. This is bullshit. I lost my banana. And then of course, he does like, he soaks it in holy water and then uses a
Yeah, that's a
branding
cool
iron
scene,
to
man. That's a cool
cauterize
scene.
it. It's so goddamn cool and it's so watchable. And then how they kill Dracula at the end by he jumps on the windmill and he basically does this gigantic crucifix shadow. And Dracula, the only weak part is Dracula just kind of like lays down, and that's the end of the movie. But it also has these look, I'm a kid and maybe I'm starting out in puberty and learning things about my body, and not to make this podcast super awkward, but then you're watching these movies and they had this just litany of gorgeous Hammer horror women, and just one after the next, you're like, these women don't live on my block.
Hammer brought the sex into the horror. They did.
God, thank God I learned something, I guess, maybe. So now that I've made the podcast incredibly weird and awkward, who's got the next pick, Shannon?
So I'm going to jump to 1974, and that's Dan Curtis's Dracula, which it's now known as. For the most part, it was known as Bram Stoker's Dracula. That has been commercially removed. I don't know exactly when that happened, but I picked this movie because technically this was the first one to introduce the alternate story, if you will, of Dracula as a sympathetic character. There was never like a love interest. He was never Vlad the Impaler. I think it was insinuated that he was a descendant of him, but he was never actually him. And he never had a love interest reincarnated. So this was the first movie that went.
Wait, Shannon, this is the one with Jack Palance, right?
Palance, yeah. Tomato.
Palance.
Tomato.
But yes, so Jack.
His family will reach out.
Yeah. But Jack, I thought it was Palance.
How dare you mispronounce his name?
I know. So sorry. I mispronounce a lot of names, so yeah. But yeah, he was known to be the villain in a lot of westerns back then. I guess, yeah. So he did okay. It's one of those movies where I think this was kind of popular, but this was so overly done. It was always a lot of pan outs, and then you would zoom in. Like that happens in every scene. You can make a drinking game out of it and be shit faced halfway through the movie.
I love Dracula's death in Dan Curtis's Dracula. I love how Dracula gets it. Okay. Like gets speared. Yeah, and he's like stuck to the table.
Yeah. And then they just leave. Then goodbye. They just leave.
Like, okay, let's go have a beer. You killed Dracula. Way to go! High five.
Now this is interesting though, because that's Dan Curtis's Dracula, and then we talked about Dan Curtis was responsible for Darren McGavin, the Night Stalker, the Dracula we love.
One more thing.
Okay, the lady raising her hand with the red hair.
I also forgot to mention too that this one, the screenplay was written by Richard Matheson, who is known for I Am Legend.
Oh, damn.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, Richard Matheson. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Some of the best Twilight Zone episodes of all time. Mm-hmm. All right. Here's my story about Dan Curtis. Dan Curtis turns out he could be a little cantankerous. So he was Darren McGavin had a lot of success with the Night Stalker. And of course, then they launched the series. And Darren McGavin's one steadfast rule was, I will do the Night Stalker, but Dan Curtis cannot be involved in any way, shape, or form. They're like, okay, don't worry about it. And then he went on to do the series. But yeah, just a terror on set, I heard, and that made me love Darren McGavin that much more because he just didn't like the way that Dan Curtis treated people. So he was like, nah, this guy can't be on. He can't be part of it.
No.
All right, Eric, what do you got for us? You're next.
Yes, my turn. Okay. We're going back in time. We're going back to the 50s. Let's go back to the 50s.
Nice.
Yeah.
What do we got?
Let's go back. Let's do the little wavy lines. Let's go back in time to 1958 for the very first color Dracula movie, The Horror of Dracula, or just Dracula, as it was known in England. Hammer Studios, right? First outing, Christopher Lee as Dracula, Peter Cushing as Van Helsing. This is the GOAT, baby. This is it, right? It all goes back to Horror Dracula. They made a bazillion sequels, of course, Hammer did. I don't want to name them all, but Dracula Has Risen from the Grave, Dracula Prince of Darkness, Scars of Dracula, Taste of Blood of Dracula, yada, yada, yada. But none of them hold a candle to the Horror Dracula, in my opinion. I think this is probably the perfect Dracula film. This is my favorite Dracula film.
Okay.
Now Christopher Lee, Sean, you say Christopher Lee is your Dracula. He's my Dracula.
My guy.
Because he was my first Dracula. I think I saw Horror Dracula before I even watched 1931 Dracula. Because as a kid, I don't want to watch some black and white, boring ass movie. I want to watch a color horror movie with blood, right?
Yeah.
So, and the Horror of Dracula scared the shit out of me. One of my fondest memories is as a kid watching Horror of Dracula on a rainy Saturday afternoon. And then after I watched it, I would go out. I went outside and it was raining and I was just walking around knowing that I was going to be fucking scared later on that night when I went to bed. I was dreading it. It's like, I don't know how I'm going to do it. Dracula's going to get me tonight. He's going to be at my window.
Yeah, he's coming.
But of course, Dracula didn't get me. And the next day, I wanted to do it all over again. That Horror of Dracula is what made me a horror fan. Christopher Lee is my favorite Dracula because he was my first Dracula. Now, I said there's a theory I had because of that. It's usually your first introduction to something is going to be your favorite, even if there was better versions later. Like, and I made the comparison before of like my first Cure album was Kiss Me, Kiss Me, Kiss Me, right? Now, is it their best album? I don't think so. I think Disintegration probably is their best album, but Kiss Me is my favorite because it was my first introduction into the Cure. It'll always hold a special place in my heart. So that's my number one Cure album. There you go. There's my theory.
That's fair.
You nailed it, though. You're so right. Shannon and I talk about this all the time. How there could possibly be better decades than the 80s for horror, but that's where we cut our teeth. And it's also like, it's the perfect cross section of when you're young enough and you're open to just like. You don't have the weight of responsibility, so you could really just let yourself go and just soak these movies up and just devour them. Just and that it was the VHS culture, and you're watching movies with friends, so it all ties together, like the nostalgia of that community experience and the friendship, and then horror's like interwoven in all of that, and it just makes for a perfect experience. When you look back on it, you're like, yeah, those were the best times, watching those movies in someone's basement or living room and just geeking out to it and just having the best time ever.
Absolutely.
Like, you can't help but now, like, Sean, like we were talking not that long ago about like all the remakes that are happening, especially with like the 80s legends, if you will, the Freddy, the Jasons, the Michaels, whatever, and all the remakes that I feel like this generation is getting now. It just doesn't compare. It's like, I feel sorry for you that this is your first experience, because it's like,
I know.
I don't know.
I know.
Just saying.
No.
Yeah, I know, but they can also go on their phone and get dates in 5 minutes, and it took me 11 years to do that. So fuck
That's a good
them.
point.
All right, give me something. I'll take the stupid horror experience. All
Man,
right.
I can't imagine if I had Tinder in my 20s. Oh, it would be.
No, forget it.
I don't
it would not go good.
It's a good thing we had the experiences we had when they had them, because we're all here right now. We're all safe, and it's all good. You know.
This is true. This is true. Very true.
So, Eric, I agree with that 100%. Yeah, Lee is my guy because he was the one that I saw first. And man, he just came into that room in his 6'4" frame, and you're like, oh my, what's happening here?
Yes,
you know,
he's a presence.
Yeah. Oh God, yeah, absolutely. All right, so I'll take us forward. I'll take us forward just a stitch, and let's go to Tobe Hooper's Salem's Lot. Now, Eric, I'm with you here. I kind of bent the rules a little bit.
Wait a second.
It's Nosferatu. It's
That's
Nosferatu.
not Dracula.
It's no. All right, I'll challenge you. Challenge. I'll challenge you.
You're out of order. This whole podcast is out of order.
Hold on, I'll be right back. I'm just gonna get popcorn.
Look, I know that I'm playing fast and loose with the rules here, but the master is a Nosferatu, and we have established that Nosferatu could possibly be the original Dracula. So I'm bending the damn rules until they're just snapping in my hands. But okay. I don't think I could do a vampire podcast where we're talking about the best vampire movies and the good Draculas without mentioning Salem's Lot. And I wanted to go to bat for Tobe Hooper because I feel like we talk about Salem's Lot and we talk about Super Groovy David Soul and we talk about James Mason, and they all deserve praise. But I feel like Tobe Hooper gets passed over time and time again. That miniseries, not only was it so popular, so successful, critically acclaimed, everybody loved it, except for the fact that CBS put the first episode on Monday night and the second on fucking Thursday. So you had to, you were like, I think I might die. How am I going to get through the week?
I think this is the third time you brought that up. You're not.
I haven't gotten. Look, I try and unpack it. In therapy over and over again. My therapist doesn't want to hear it anymore.
Still not over it.
I got to share it with you guys. But that movie did for vampires, like in the suburbs. I grew up in the suburbs, and I was like, wait a minute. So Danny Glick could come and scratch on my window, and there's not a damn thing I can do about it. And that movie, I mean, it still leaves an impression on me, decades later. It's so scary. It's so simple, just like Jeffrey Lewis in the rocking chair, just slowly going back and forth with those glowing red eyes. And nothing's jumping out at you. There's really no jump scares. Like in that scene, there's nothing that is just launching at you in the frame, but it's so creepy and it's so subtly done. But you close your eyes now and you can picture it, and it haunts you. It literally haunts you. So a little shout out to Salem's Lot, even though I am definitely cheating on this.
I'm glad you brought it up. I'm glad you brought Salem's Lot because Horror Dracula might be my favorite Dracula movie, but Salem's Lot is my favorite vampire movie. Now,
good man.
You mentioned Jeffrey Lewis in your speech there about Salem's Lot. So also, I wrote a novel called Death Machine. I don't know if you can see that. So,
well, we're going to put the link in the show notes. You can count on that.
Now, this is a shameless plug, but also it does have something to do with Salem's Lot. So in the novel, it's about a 13-year-old kid growing up in Northern California. That sounds familiar, huh? Which is basically me. And there's a chapter I devote to Salem's Lot about the character has a sleepover, and they're watching Salem's Lot on TV, and that Jeffrey Lewis scene comes on with the rocking chair, and which I think is the scariest moment of that miniseries. Right? Now, the most iconic, of course, is little Danny Glick scratching at the window. Iconic, totally scary. I get it, but it's that Jeffrey Lewis scene that is absolutely terrifying. And the way Tobe Hooper films it, you're right. Tobe doesn't get enough praise. He just, it's a masterwork of horror. And I mean, Tobe did Texas Chainsaw, right? The guy is a master. Mm-hmm. So yes, I'm glad you brought Salem's Lot up. I'll allow it.
After all that.
All right, so thank you, sir, for allowing it. I am going to do two things. We're definitely putting the link on for Death Machine, and
for sure.
At the end of the episode, let us know what you have on the horizon. But yeah, I suck at my job, so I should have said that you're an author and you wrote an incredible novel. But I'm okay. Not only am I garbage at my job, but I can't even follow the own rules that I created for my Dracula podcast. All right, there's the last thing I'll say about Tobe Hooper, and then we can move on. Tobe Hooper systematically ruined the safe spaces in your life as a child. You have the master intrudes on the safest spot in your house, which was the kitchen. In that scene where he kills the parents, and then James Mason challenges Father Callahan. So he's ruined the kitchen for you. I grew up in the suburbs, and we were always cutting through the woods. He fucking ruined the woods for me, because now you're like, oh, well, we're easily going to die. Yeah. He ruined. What else did he ruin? He got he ruined your bedroom, because Danny Glick could then come in if you were dumb enough to open it up. I mean, he really just ruined the suburbs collectively, and I love him for it. I absolutely love him for it. So, yes. More Tobe Hooper love there. All right, I'll get off my Hooper soapbox now. Shannon, what have you got?
So I'm going to jump way ahead. So this one might be kind of random, but
no, don't worry. The timelines, we're going back and forth. Whatever.
So this is a directorial debut, 2014, Dracula Untold.
All right. Yes, Luke Evans, right?
So this was directed by Gary Shore. Again, this is his directorial debut. And for the most part, I think it's a solid film. I get it. It's definitely modernized. It's definitely some moments, especially one certain fight scene. It's definitely Hollywoodified, if you will. But I really liked the story. I liked how he, because again, I picked the 1974 version of Dan Curtis. Dan Curtis created the idea of Dracula being a sympathetic character. So I liked how this story just kind of took that. Because Francis Ford Coppola kind of did it, obviously, the same fashion. He just kind of flipped around some of the characters. But I liked this version where he took this story and wanted to explore Vlad the Impaler as a man, and why and or how he became Dracula. And I just thought that it's a solid story, honestly. And I'm also very jealous that this version, he can just burst into a group of bats and fly away, because I really want that superpower.
Who doesn't?
Yeah, I want it.
I've never seen Dracula Untold.
It's solid. Like I said, it's a good story. Not a perfect film in any way.
I'll support you there, Shannon. It's not bad. I think it's a product of the studio. They made a PG-13. They basically, they defanged it. See what I did there? They made
Was this supposed to be part of the new MonsterVerse that was like with the Mummy, Tom Cruise's Mummy, and was that part of that?
So. I don't.
I think it might be a little bit before that,
around the same time,
but they definitely had plans of. I think they had plans of doing something. They leave it open to a sequel. I know that, because they bring it into modern times in the last 5 minutes, right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna be honest, man. I have problems with any Dracula movie after 2000. There's not a lot of good ones.
No, there's not.
I don't know. Man. I'm not well versed in Dracula films.
No, they're not.
Yeah. No, there's really not a lot to pick from. But that's why I think I honed in on this one, because out of all of them, again, it's not a perfect film, but it's good for, especially for a directorial debut, for Shore's first movie ever. I think it was a good, it was, it was good.
It's a good cable watch.
Yeah.
It's a good cable watch.
I'll check it out. I'll check it out.
Yeah. It's definitely more about the story, and it's not so much like the horror elements, honestly. Yeah. So that's but yeah. I figured nobody would like that one. So.
Eric, you're up next, and if it's the movie that I think you're going to talk about, I'm going to get real excited. So what have you got?
Unlike you two, I go in chronological order. Okay. I'm now in the 70s. And I am going to go with Dracula from 1979, directed by John Badham, starring Frank Langella, who also played Dracula in the Broadway play, much like the 1931 Dracula. This was a Broadway play in the 70s. Frank Langella was Dracula. He has a great stage presence. He's sexy. He's got the hair. And so they're we need to make a film of this version of Dracula. So they did. And I like it. I don't love it, but I like it. And I like the look of the film. It brings back the Gothic kind of vibe from the Universal films, right?
Yeah.
1979 was a big year for vampire films. You had Salem's Lot. You had Love at First Bite with George Hamilton, right? You had Dracula with Frank Langella. So Dracula was everywhere in 1979.
Big Dracula year, yeah.
And like I said, Frank Langella is he commands this film. You cannot take your eyes off of him. He is a sexy Dracula. I have problems with sexy vampires. I do. I don't like sexy vampires. I don't want vampirism to be a fun thing. I don't want it to be sexy. I want it to be scary, horrible, and like these people are damned to hell. They're not out having dates, sparkling. That's not what I want, right? But you cannot deny Langella's performance. I would let him bite me. If he walked into a room, like, God damn, right here, Frank,
right
get it.
Guilty. I'm with you, Eric. I'm like,
And it has a great score by John Williams, fabulous score, cinematography. There's two versions you could watch. You can watch the washed out version where the color has been drained from the film. I like that because it kind of harkens back to the black and white movies.
Yeah.
Or they redid it with the color put back in. It's been remastered. It's a gorgeous film. But so there's two different films you can watch, versions you can watch. Dracula 1979. It's always great. Every time I pop it on, I'm like, man, I like this film. This is a cool film. So that's my pick on the 70s.
I like it.
Yeah.
That Dracula film was so good. It's so good. I was so excited because you put it when we were DMing each other. You said you were going to talk about it, so I backed off. But I watched it this week, and I watched the desaturated version because I had never seen that. And I remember going to see this movie in '79. I went with my mom and dad, and when they Laurence Olivier and Donald Pleasance dig up. So they did one thing. They flip-flop Mina and Lucy. So
all Dracula movies do that. They change names for some weird reason.
Confusing to me. So they go after, I think it's Lucy, and there's mines that have been dug all underneath the town, and she's in the mine shaft. And the reveal of her, and it's heartbreaking because you got Laurence Olivier as Van Helsing, and it's his daughter. Yeah. And he drops his crucifix and he's looking for it in a puddle in this mine shaft, and then you can see her in the reflection, and then he looks up and you can see he's horrified, and then they show her, and they did this little film effect where they make like little tiny flickering, almost like flickering red, like rubies for eyes, and it's so effective, and it scared the shit out of me in '79. It damn near ruined my summer. I mean, I had sleepless nights because of this. endlessly. I couldn't tell my parents because then they weren't going to take me to horror movies anymore. But I started in silent.
No, for sure, man. That's the best scene in the film. That
It's so
catacomb
scary.
scene. Yeah.
Here's my only problem. Now, Eric, you tell me if you agree or disagree. My only problem with the film is that it starts out bananas. You start on the Demeter, and it's almost like they're trying to fuck this coffin over the side, but it gets caught, and this werewolf arm comes up and literally, I mean, you see it rip the throat out of a sailor. This is in the first 3 minutes of the film, and you're like, is someone reading my dream journal? What is going on here? This is the best thing I've ever seen. And it just kind of ramps up and ramps up and ramps up, because then you go to the sanitarium with Donald Pleasance, and everyone's loose and everyone's screaming, and it's just this like heightened atmosphere. Then you have Lucy discovers Dracula in the cave on the beach, and it's just on roller skates for like 20 minutes. Yeah. And then Frank Langella, the introduction of Frank Langella, and I'm telling you right now, guys, they must have had to have filmed this damn intro 200 times, because he does this thing with his cape where he takes it off and like swooshes it around and throws it into the waiting like the manservant's arms without looking. And it's so cool. And you're immediately like, fuck everybody in this movie. I want to be Dracula, and I want to be with Dracula. And the best thing that the movie does is that before Kate Nelligan even gets bit, she's looking at Jonathan Harker, who is kind of like this like kind of douchey playboy. And then she looks at Dracula, and she's like, the vampire? Okay, whatever. I'm going with this guy.
I'm going with Dracula. Yep.
And then fast forward to the end of the movie, she's quote unquote saved, but Dracula's cape kind of flutters off into the distance. It doesn't sink. It flies off, and she gets this wry little smile on her face, and you're like, oh no, she's totally still Team Dracula. And I just kind of loved it. Even though they killed Dracula at the end.
Once you go Drac, you can't go back.
Right?
It's true. It's true.
You can't go back to Jonathan Harker and that.
Man, what about the laser light sex scene?
Oh my God! I can't believe we didn't even bring that up. All right, so wait, Shannon, have you seen this movie?
That's straight 70s right there.
Okay,
you gotta watch it.
Picture disco roller skating in the 70s with smoke and lights, and now inject a vampire sex scene, and then, well, I'm not done yet, then superimpose a bat flying on screen. It's an acid trip. You gotta watch it. You just have to watch it. But like,
it's awesome.
We're talking about the movie, but just the care and the professional craftsmanship that went into this. You got Gilbert Taylor was a cinematographer. He only did a little movie called Star Wars, Flash Gordon. He worked with Hitchcock on Frenzy. He did The Omen. He worked with Polanski on Macbeth. Then you got W.D. Richter wrote the screenplay. He did The Invasion of the Body Snatchers, Big Trouble in Little China, Buckaroo Banzai. Like there were insanely talented people that did this movie, and the sets are gorgeous, man. I mean, it's just really I like the film, but I'm going to roll this into my next pick because I feel like the thing that Dracula in '79 failed to do was maintain that first 20 minutes where it's just like crazy, because once Dracula comes in and swooshes his cape off, then you kind of go into a chamber piece. Then it kind of settles into what the play was. Oh my God. All right, Eric, I got to tell you this, because John Langan is maybe go back to therapy to unpack so many things. So we spoke to him last week, and I told him the story, how we went and saw the play Dracula, because we were here in New York with Frank Langella, and it was incredible. But I overheard my mom talking to, we went as, with family friends. There was a whole group of us. She's talking to the other moms about how sexy Frank Langella is. I made the huge mistake of telling John Langan this, and he's like, your dad had a Dracula cape in the closet. And I'm like, maybe, John, but we don't need to talk about it on the podcast,
That's awesome, man.
You couldn't. Yeah, well, you'll hear it on Tuesday if you listen to the episode, because of
No,
course I
that's
had
all
to leave
right.
it in. But he's messed up my
rad.
childhood, something terrible. But so the Dracula 79, it really it sets this tone, and then it kind of like planes out. And there are definitely moments like the beneath the in the mine shaft beneath the cemetery, and even the end, like on the ship when they do kill Dracula. They're very cool moments throughout. There's a really cool scene between Van Helsing and Frank Langella where they have this, I know what you are and you know what I am scene in the 79 movie, which I'd never seen before. Like, they actually have a little bit of a confrontation, and it's very cool. Like, it's very self-contained, but it's very cool. But my next movie is Bram Stoker's Dracula, Coppola's Dracula from 92, because I feel like Coppola took the blueprint of the Stoker novel, but also that Badham film, and he was like, okay, Badham, like, he sets this crazy pace and this crazy tone, and then he kind of like levels off. What if I set that crazy pace and crazy tone and I never, ever settle off, and it just keeps going off the chart? And that's Coppola's Dracula. It just progressively gets crazier as it goes along. And I love it for that.
I agree. Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula is my pick from the 90s. And to me, it's really like the last great Dracula movie. I think it's high time that a new Dracula movie comes out. Somebody has got to remake Dracula, because we got to go back to 92 for the last great Dracula movie. But no, Stoker's, Francis Coppola, this movie is beautiful, right? It is stunning to look at. He's using all practical effects and camera tricks, stuff that could have been done back in 1931. So the only drawback is, of course, the casting. Would I have cast Keanu Reeves as Jonathan Harker? No, I wouldn't. But nobody asked me. Francis, you should have asked me before you cast Keanu. I would have said no, but he did. and we have to live with it. We live with it.
Yeah, we do. We do.
It is what it is. We love Keanu. I love Keanu Reeves. You're good with it? You're good with Keanu, Shannon?
I'm forgiven. Yeah, I'm okay with it.
All right. No, that's big of you. You have forgiven Francis. I need to forgive Francis too. I really do.
We do. We all have to collectively let it go. I tell you though, when we had Andy Davidson, and when he's on Cradle to the Grave, you got to brace him on this. He is. What did he say, Shannon? He's a Keanu Reeves apologist.
Okay, I'm going to ask him.
Yeah,
he's coming on to chat Puppet Master with me.
Nice.
I can't wait for that.
I know.
I cannot wait to see what Andy Davidson has to say about Puppet Master. I am thrilled to hear this episode.
I can't wait either.
All right. Hold on, Eric. I got to ask you one question, because Shannon already knows my answer to this. Okay. You have Sadie Frost is playing Lucy, and you've got Winona Ryder is playing Mina. What if you flip-flop those in the role? Because Sadie Frost is so dynamic and so magnetic. And, she plays a great Lucy, and she has an incredible death scene. But I always wonder, boy, oh boy, I don't know that Winona Ryder could have even possibly pulled off the Lucy role, but it would have been interesting to see. But man, I'm telling you, Sadie Frost she really could have done something.
I like that flip-flop. I'm down with that.
Yeah. I'd like to see that.
I like Winona Ryder, but again, it's Winona, right? It's just like when you see Keanu, it's Keanu, right? Yeah. They're not the greatest actors, great celebrities, right? Yeah. Fun movies that they've been in, but I don't know. Yeah, it's a casting thing with 92 Dracula. That
to be fair,
it's the one mark I have to put against it.
To be fair, though, I don't know if they were ready at the time for a time period piece. Like, is it right? Because like they really have never done them ever again. So like a lot. It's not what they're known for. I feel like there's a lot of people that just they get into a time period piece and they like you believe them that they actually went back in time to pull off this role. And I just think those are two people that just it's not for them really. They did the best they could, I think, under Coppola's
for sure.
direction, but that's what I think the issue is, honestly.
And even with all that said, you do have Gary Oldman as Dracula, and he is astonishing. That kills it as Dracula.
Yeah.
And is this the first time that they've tied in the legend of Vlad the Impaler to Dracula, or was that from Dan Curtis? Did Dan Curtis Dracula
So there's
do
a
that?
lot of people who are big Dracula fans that go, because Francis Ford Coppola, I'm sure, said like, a Dracula like you've never seen, visually, sure. But the story is straight up from Dan Curtis's. And again, actually, it was flipped. Dan Curtis's love interest was Lucy, not Nina or Minna, as they called her. So that's like the big thing that they actually. So technically, Sean, you do have your flip. It's just not in this movie.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So, but a lot of people say like, oh, this is a reenactment of Dan Curtis's version back in the 70s. So there's a lot, some people are like,
okay. All right. That's interesting.
Yeah. But yeah.
All right, Shannon, you're up. You got anything for present day or no?
I did. That was the Dracula Untold was mine. You told me to pick 3.
Okay. I know. I always like to set you up for traps and then spring these on. I just have Eric. We'll finish with you. I just have one that I'll give a little shout out. It was an entertaining film, which was The Last Voyage of the Demeter.
Yeah, that was
came out in 2023. Yeah, Universal. I mean, you basically had one variation of Dracula, which is like this bat creature, which is very cool. And I love, I love we know what the problem is. We're kind of at the mercy of our situation. We're in the middle of the sea. Let's all band together. And they're doomed because you know the story. But I love a movie like that. I love a siege movie and I love a ticking clock,
Mm-hmm.
So I thought they did a pretty good job to make an entertaining film. I don't know that where it really falls in with Dracula movies or if it even falls in with Dracula movies, but it was okay. It was a pretty good watch.
Yeah, I like how they took a really tiny chapter from the novel and made a whole movie out of it. So I thought that was cool. I like that they only use mostly practical effects. I think they CG'd the wings on Dracula, but that was a guy in that suit who played Dracula. And it was scary. Again, it was kind of like a Nosferatu type of Dracula, creature. So that was cool. I liked the movie. Yeah.
And you got to respect a movie. And sorry, sinners, we're going to spoil this. This one's pretty recent, but we're going to spoil it. So cover your ears if you don't want it spoiled. You got to respect a movie that's going to kill a kid. I mean, not only do they kill a kid, they kill a kid fucking twice.
You're not expecting it, and they do.
No, you're really, because you're waiting like, oh, how are they going to save them? They do not. All right, Eric, you got cleanup. You're batting cleanup. Do you have anything for the present day?
I got 3 for you.
Yeah, all right, my man.
Okay, here we go. From the 80s, we got Monster Squad, 1987. Like I mentioned, I chatted with Duncan Rieger, who played Dracula in the film. I think this is a continuation of the Lugosi characterization of Dracula. He took the baton from Lugosi and he ran with it. He continued the classic Dracula look, right? He had the dinner suit, the cape with the red lining, the medallion or whatever he's wearing around his neck. That, again, solidified the look of Dracula for a new generation of horror fans. Monster Squad, 87, watch it. Mm-hmm. And then I'm going modern day. Like I said, I had problems with a lot of Dracula movies from the 2000s. Van Helsing. I don't know if I can't pick Van Helsing. I can't do it. But what I can pick Dracula season 1. It's a Netflix series. It came out in 2021.
Boom.
Yeah, that was cool. It was like a new retelling of Dracula from a different point of view. The guy who plays Dracula in the series, I'm not the biggest fan, but he's cool. I also like, spoilers, how at the end they bring him into modern day. I really like that, how he was like trapped in the ocean. So Dracula season 1, watch it, very cool. And then my third
Myers,
final,
right? That's the one.
No, Shannon. This is a BBC production.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know the actor's name, but there's an actress who plays the nun Abigail. She's awesome in this series. I love her look and the way she talks. She has a really cool way of talking. Her accent's awesome. So it's very cool. And then my final film from 2023, Renfield, with Nicolas Cage as Dracula.
All right. Yeah.
Right.
Was it worth it?
A fun movie. Yeah, it's fun. It's a goofy film. Of course, Nicolas Cage, he's a goofy actor, but he's a fun actor, and I like his look of Dracula. He hams it up as Nicolas Cage does, right? That's his job, is to ham it up. That's what we want. That's why we bring Nicolas Cage into a movie.
Yeah.
And it's a cool film. It's definitely worth watching. So, yeah. And then Last Voyage of Demeter, that's like you said, that's a really cool Dracula movie. And that's pretty much brings us up to modern day until Robert Eggers comes out with Nosferatu this year. And hopefully sticks the landing with that film, because I can't wait.
A lot of high hopes for that one.
But man, like I said, it's high time that somebody out there does another adaptation of Stoker's novel. We need a new Dracula movie, a straightforward Dracula movie.
Agree.
Somebody do it.
Practical effects, great sets, have a crack at it.
Go back to
I'm
like
with
the
you.
horror.
I'm with you on that. All right, Eric, I'm going to put you on the spot. Shannon, we're gonna trap Eric now, because then we could use his own words against him. When Nosferatu comes out, when Eggers' Nosferatu comes out, will you join us? Will you join us a week after, and the three of us will have at it?
I would like nothing more than to come back to Sinful Cuts and chat about Nosferatu from 1924, or not 2024.
That's not until the end of the year, though. We're getting you back way before that, but I want to lock you in for Nosferatu.
Anytime. Yeah, this was a blast, man. So thank you so much for having me on.
You can't escape yet. I know the clock's ticking. We got to let you go in a minute, but we wanted to ask you. We got 3 quick questions for you. Okay, the first one, we do our silly questions at the end. The first one is, give us, what's your scariest horror experience? Could be a movie, could be like, you and your friends go check out the neighborhood haunted house, whatever it is. What's the scariest experience you've ever had?
Oh man, I'm going back to Salem's Lot. Like I said before, as a kid, my parents wouldn't let me watch the miniseries when it came out in 1979. I think they knew it was too much, but I snuck watched it. Somehow I got my hands on it. And
grounded.
And I lost so much sleep. From that film. Many terrifying nights in bed with the covers pulled up over my neck, because that's how you keep Dracula from getting you, and the vampires.
You're totally safe.
They can't get your neck when you got the cover over it.
Everyone knows it. Everyone knows that.
I would say Salem's Lot is probably the most terrifying thing that I've watched, and I've been chasing that high ever since.
Yeah, same. That's a great pick. All right, Shannon, how about number 2?
So the second question is, what is a trash movie that you love? Like, everyone thinks it's trash, but you'll defend it to the death.
Well, let me think. Oh man, does it have to be a horror movie?
No,
Or can it be
no,
any movie?
No, any movie.
Any movie.
Oh man, I wish I would have known beforehand so I could come up with a quick answer. But let me rack my brain. A trash movie.
Do you want to hear Andy Davison's answer?
Oh wait, I got one.
Okay.
I got
All right,
one.
let's do it.
Okay. I'm gonna keep it Dracula centric. Okay. Since this is a Dracula podcast chat that we're talking, I'm gonna go Andy Warhol's Dracula from 1974, also known as Blood for Dracula. I don't know if you've seen it, but it stars Udo Kier as Dracula, and it is the most disturbing, kooky, trashy film that you'll ever see. And if you haven't seen it, watch it. Blood for Dracula. It's out. It just came out on Blu-ray, a new version. Looks gorgeous. It's actually a really well shot film, but it is trashy as hell.
Yeah.
And you know what? It's cool. Udo Kier is magnificent as this very sympathetic Dracula. He plays it like a little lost puppy dog because he needs virgin blood, right? He needs virgin blood, and there's no virgins where he lives. So he's like, we need to go find virgins. So, yeah. So him and his buddy, his assistant, they travel to this place where this aristocrat has 3 young daughters who supposedly are virgins. They're not. Spoiler alert. Dracula thinks they're virgins, so he sucks on their blood, and then he gets sick when he drinks a non-virgin woman's blood. It's awesome. Check it out. Totally trash. There you go.
Love it.
All right, that's a good one. That's good. And then we got one last one, and then we'll let you go. Shannon, the last one, please.
All right. What is your best and or worst book to film adaptation that you either love or hate? You could have 2 answers if you want.
Okay. I got one. And I think it's going to be both, actually. It's going to be the worst and the best. I'm going to go with Stephen King's The Shining, right? So I think Kubrick's adaptation is fucking brilliant. I love what he does with that film. He takes the basic premise of The Shining, right? And he made it his own. The framework is there, right? The Overlook Hotel. Jack Torrance going crazy, trying to kill his family, the haunting, and all that stuff. So I think Kubrick's adaptation is great. I know Stephen King doesn't like it, but I like it. I think it's cool. But then in 1997, Mick Garris adapted The Shining, and it's not that good. He did a miniseries. He did a miniseries for like ABC or something in 97. And I like Mick Garris. I think he's a competent director. He made some fun films. But the problem is he had Stephen King write the screenplay, and they follow the novel to the T. And you can't do that with novels. I think, and you can't have the author adapt his own novel because you need to cut out some of the fat of a novel because it's a different medium. You know, a novel and a film are 2 different things, and they don't always mesh, right? They don't always translate well. And that's the problem with Garris's adaptation of The Shining. He follows it too closely. It meanders, and it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. So
I like it.
There you go.
Nice.
Solid answer. Yeah.
And that's no shame on or against Mick Garris. I think he's a cool dude. I like his podcast. I just think that that adaptation was misguided. But
it might have been like a revenge project. Honestly, is possibly.
You're probably right. I think it was King's revenge.
Hated it that much.
Yes.
So.
So now, Eric, before we let you split, we just wanted to give you ample time to, well, first off, sinners, if you're not listening to Cradle to the Grave, which we know you are, you have to listen to this podcast. It is without a doubt one of, if not the best out there. If you're into horror, you're doing yourself a disservice if you're not listening to Cradle to the Grave. I eagerly anticipate the next episode. And the great thing about Erik is that they come. I mean, they come pretty fast and furious, so you're never waiting long.
They do, man. They do. I don't take any time off, man. I need to.
I don't know how you do it. Jeez. You clone yourself. Anything else you'd like to promote, though, before we let you split?
Well, like you said, Cradle to the Grave, if you just go to the Google and you type in Cradle to the Grave podcast, it's going to pop up. It's on Spotify. It's on all the Apple podcasts and whatnot. And I have a lot of different guests come on from different walks of life. It's always a blast to chat with my guests. It's why I do it. It's why I spend so much time doing it. I love horror, but you know what? I love talking with awesome people about horror. And so that's what Cradle to the Grave is all about. It's like I said, Sean, to you earlier, it's like the coolest party that everybody's invited to. Just come and hang out with us, man. Have a good time.
And that's exactly how it feels. Yeah, absolutely.
So there's that. You mentioned my novel Death Machine. If you go to Amazon, you can order a copy, Death Machine by Erik Hanson, or you can email me and I will send you a personalized copy because I got a bunch in my garage. And so there's that. And I am currently working on my second novel, which is a vampire novel.
Nice.
And hopefully that comes out next year. But man, it's hard to make time to write these days because I'm always doing Zooms.
You're a busy man. You're a busy man. But we greatly appreciate your time today. This was a blast. I knew it was going to be a blast, but this exceeded my expectation. This was just such a good
Sorry for the
time.
rough start.
Cool, man.
Enjoy Super Bowl. And man, we'll be in touch soon because we're having you back.
Absolutely. Anytime. Just let me know.
You got it. Take care.
All right. Bye, guys.